talking about, really. I mean, because nobody's shined a light on this topic yet. It's about games that were written in Czechoslovakia before 1989, what that community was like, what they were doing, what kind of technology they had. It's a really, it's a book we're very proud of. It's a very, very interesting book, but it's also kind of exactly what we had in mind for this histories, bringing different things into the light of history. And yeah, that's what the series is. And we are also open to books and have currently one in the pipeline relating to game preservation. So Judd Ruggell, the guy I mentioned actually before, and Ken McAllister, they're both at the University of Arizona, are writing a book about history and preservation practices at cultural institutions and by private collectors, kind of a comparison and survey through the lens of what this means for game history, what these different practices mean, and what kind of impact they'll have on the kind of history that people can write. So that's, I don't know, I'm sure it's not going to be out this year, probably out next year. So yeah, there's a bunch of books in the pipeline.
It seems to me that your authors, their research techniques, the artifacts that they find compelling as they try to write these histories might be good information for us. So I'll probably just write you email asking if you can give me contact information for some of your authors.
Of course. You might end up getting interviewed in return by them.
This is a small digression. The Iron Curtain book is actually really interesting to me for a number of reasons. First, Eastern Europe is a massive outsource location for game development today. So it seems like there's a lot of history there that could inform current practices. But also, one of my thoughts is that we should really be looking at communities that aren't known for their game development and see what these, I guess, indigenous systems of play are emerging using Western game Japanese and American game development technologies. And it seems like I'm going to find this book. I'm going to read this book.
Absolutely. And the thing about whether it's Czechoslovakia or Poland or East Germany, all those countries, their indigenous practices, their game development was based on Western technology but with so many restrictions on their access to it that they were simultaneously illicitly copying things, like famously the Z80 chip, which was copied all over Eastern Europe. But also then, because they couldn't produce them, they were doing all kinds of things locally that were refracting the information that they were getting about Western technology and then generating something new. I think you'll love the book.
I would probably also really like talking to this author. So
yeah, they're cool guys. Yeah, they're fun. And I'm trying to think. They're can't remember the name of the collection. They have really now one of the largest collections of software at Arizona. They're two faculty running this thing. The library's been very little help to them. So they are doing things that a lot of other collections do not do. For example, everything in their collection circulates, and I mean to the world. They just you ask for something, they mail it to you, and then they hope that, of course, that it comes back. But I think they've done pretty well in that respect. Yeah, I think that'll be a good conversation. Just send me an email and I'll give you the contact information or introduce you, whatever you prefer.
I don't know if you can see the chat, but Kylie's already been doing some research on the link so that I can find on some of it later.
I have to put my glasses on for that. Put these on.
She's just pulled up a couple of the MIT page and the Amazon, the Iron Curtain again.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Thank you, Kylie.
We'll have to get a copy from the lab.
I can hear. I just have construction workers yelling outside my apartment a lot of the time, so I leave myself muted.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I hope they're behaving.
So it sounds like a lot of your collection is, even the physical stuff has been digitized to be stored digitally as well.
I'll say that again.
A lot of your collection, even the physical stuff, has been digitized so that you access it electronically.
Actually, no.
Okay.
Actually, very little of our collection generally has been digitized. You mean print now? Or are you talking about, because
well, I was interested in the electronic representation of these physical objects.
Okay, so you were not talking about reformatting of so like a floppy disk from the 1980s. That's not what you meant when we reformatted that to get it into a disk image that we have in our repository. Or
We're
is that
actually working on that. We have the Doug Sharp collection. Doug worked on King of Chicago, Free DC, and Chipwits in the late 80s and early 90s, and he has donated a lot of his stuff to Living Computers Museum and Labs. I believe you met Cindy, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things we are dealing with is his floppy disks, which Living Computers has never accepted a collection of non-factory produced floppy disks before. These are handwritten personal builds, personal notes. And so we are dealing with some of that, but also, assuming you have print documents, how they've been digitized, I'm sort of wondering how you're processing this information. What's important as you're storing this information about these artifacts? What's important as you're translating them to another medium?
Yeah, okay, so there's a lot of different scenarios and workflows. There's reformatting, which would be, for example, the Cabernetti collection. That's the project we did with the National Institute for Standards and Technology, and that was reformatting close to 10,000 software titles from floppy, cassette, CD, whatever it was in that 72 to 93 time frame, to objects, disk images that can be disk images plus photography of the boxes and the inserts that can live in our digital repository. So that's when I say reformatting. I mean, taking a digital object that's in a container that we know is going to not be good forever, and moving it to something that we find more conducive to preservation. So that's the reformatting case.
I'm going to jump in real fast.
Yeah.
Are you worried about also providing a means to access that information, given its probably widely varied formats, right? You're probably talking about dealing with systems that aren't in common use anymore. Is it just that you're providing the images and other people will find out how to mount them, or are you providing a system for the analysis?
So I'm thinking how to answer this. You open up a really complicated can of worms, lots of different projects. If you think of different projects we've done on a line of sort of workflow and output, from where on one end it's acquiring the stuff, then dealing with the preservation, reformatting, then metadata for them, and eventually access. Okay, if you're going in that direction. Our projects have actually lined up that way over about 20 years since we acquired the collection, right? We've gotten through the metadata project was the metadata. Okay, that leaves access as the last
okay
to do. And that's what you're asking about. Well, we're now one of the nodes for the emulation as a service project that SPN, Software Preservation Network, is coordinating under the auspices of Educopia. So it's called EASY, Emulation as a Service, something installation or something like that. And so we're not the lead on that. Yale University, but we're one of the 6 or 8 nodes to start off. Now, when that happens, in theory, the technology will allow us to provide access to a software object that we have in an emulated version of its native environment, right? Through the network, through a request that's received through the network. From Washington, somebody can request a title that they see is in the Cabernetti collection, and all that stuff will be loaded up, and they can operate it from Washington. That's the technology is getting there. We're thinking about a year or